Would you stand with me for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Texas pledge. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right, we do have a guest who would like to address the board and the community. Ms. Muniz, if you'll please come forward to share a little information about the third annual Autism Walk.
Hello, my name is Erica Muniz, and I came today to talk about the third annual Radar Foundation's Autism Walk. I am a single mom of 4 boys, and 3 of my boys have autism. And they are here in this district. And so I came because I want our community to get together and just come and support us. Last year we didn't do nothing because of COVID, but the year before that we did do something at the Holy Liner. This year's gonna be located at 16th Street Park at 2 o'clock. And we just want everybody to participate and come together to show support to these kids. Only because my kids have a disability doesn't mean that we're any less than any other kid. Also, sorry. Also, I just want y'all to know how these kids are. They're amazing kids. They're a blast to be around. I've also been doing videos on my social network, and I just want teachers and principals and whoever just to come together. I mean, there's no names being said on the videos as well, and I just want y'all just to tell y'all story as well as a person that has dealt with kids with special needs. And we're also, the walk is for $10, and we're also selling shirts. But if you go for the walk and you get a t-shirt, it's both of them for $20. But I just came here today just so y'all can come together as a community and support us on this day. And I hope to see y'all there.
Thank you so much. We'll post this information on our social media as well, and we'll share this information. So thank you so much. Okay. All right. Getting into our presentations, we do have a presentation, I believe, for our art students. Mr. Brown brought to our attention, I believe, some fine art recognitions. So, all right.
Hi, I'm Winetta Baco. I am the TAEA Region 17 BASE Director. BASE stands for the Visual Arts Scholastic Event. It's held across the state of Texas during the entire month of February. During the event, we go through the regional competition, and then in the afternoons we do the area competition. The ones that advance out of there goes to state in San Marcos, Texas, and they have the opportunity to earn a gold medal there at the state competition, as well as the possibility of receiving a gold seal. This year, Carson Graves has received the honor of going to state with his piece called Vortex. Carson, could you tell us a little bit about what that piece is?
It's a wooden base that I put pieces together and then turned on a lid.
Okay.
What were the different kinds of wood
Used Purdue, maple, and walnut.
How many hours?
It took about 2 weeks or so.
All right. Well, we congratulate you, and we hope that you earn your state medal, as well as the possibility of receiving a gold seal.
Thank you.
There. And this certificate is presented to you by the Board of Education.
Thank you.
Students are going to see earned regional medals in the competition.
And we do have art displayed throughout the room, so I hope y'all had an opportunity to go through and view some of the art, some of the work from our students. Okay. All right. All right, we'll go to the business agenda. The first business item is our instructional calendar. Ms. Salazar?
Good evening. You guys have a copy of the calendar, I believe, in your board book. So if you want to take a look at that, we typically begin by looking at creating a calendar that is much like the current year. We look at Region 17, we look at Region 16. And we come together with some different drafts and proposals. The one that you have in front of you is the one that is brought to you by administration, including the superintendent's leadership team, the teaching and learning team, and then it's also gone before the EIC committee. We also did a staff survey regarding some of the elements of the calendar, and using the results from those, they were incorporated into what you see in front of you. So everything that is in green are the holidays on the calendar. You can see that includes Labor Day, that includes a fall break, 3-day fall break like we had this year. That includes a full week at Thanksgiving, 2 weeks at Christmas. It includes MLK Day, a week for spring break, and then Good Friday in April. You'll see 2 bad weather days are green with gold diamonds. Those are, of course, just like they are every year. If we are in need of minutes, we will attend school. If we are not in need of those extra minutes, then those are kind of the extra holidays that we have built into the calendar there. We will start school, the new school employees will start on the 28th, 29th, and 30th. Okay, oh, you scared me for a minute. I was like, what? Where's the pink? Okay, sorry. You'll see that they start on the 28th, the 29th, and the 30th of July. And then all staff come back on the 2nd. The first week is professional development, and your teaching and learning team is currently working on what that professional development will look like and finalizing a schedule so that we have that ready before the school year is over. We have 2 days there, the 9th and the 10th, that will be full work days for staff in their classroom before students arrive on the 12th. Every yellow day is the beginning of a new 6 weeks. So it's not a holiday, it's not anything other than just marking the beginning of a new grading period. The 2 blue days are the 2 early release days that we have next year. One of them is before Thanksgiving and one of them is right before Christmas. You will notice the thing that looks a little different this year on the calendar is where you see a half orange and a half red day, and you see one of those each 6 weeks. That is where the last several years we have provided a work day, professional development day at the end of the 6 weeks to allow staff to work on finalizing grades, paperwork that they may have. There may have been a few trainings, small, short, 1-hour trainings, that kind of thing here and there. One of the surveys that we did this year was asking staff, would you like to have those alternating so that 1 6 weeks you have a professional development day, 1 6 weeks you have a work day? Would you like it to be half work day, half professional development day? Or would you like one of each every 6 weeks, which would extend the school year? More than 60% voted for it to be half and half. Half work day, half professional development day. So that's why you see the box in half orange and half red. That's what that is. Just like the first week, August 2nd through the 6th, is being worked on by teaching and learning staff right now, these days are as well. So we will have training solidified and worked through before school is out, and we will have those schedules so that consultants and Region 17 and people that we have contracted with will already be on the calendar, will be ready to go. I will say that teaching and learning, our teaching and learning directors, Straley, Katrina, Mary, Brandy, everybody works hard to also provide trainings in the district for staff. Again, all of those will be scheduled. We're working together so that we have pulled the right people at the right time, and yet we're still allowing that work day time as well for teachers in the classroom. The gray dates there are your state assessment dates as they stand now by TEA. Probably won't change, but I say probably because, TEA, state assessment, we never know. So those are where they have currently been calendared by the state at this time. Graduation is on May 27th. That is slated as a work day, and then graduation as well. So that kind of gives you an overarching view of the calendar. Any questions that you have? Oh, I can tell you, we do currently have 77,130 minutes scheduled. We have to have 75,600. So we have minutes built in to the calendar that are extra. If you need those numbers again, some of you started writing. 77,130 is what we have built in. You have to have 75,600. So we have more than enough minutes. That allows us those, West Texas bad weather, early release, late start. If Dr. Sanchez needs to make the call for any days because of emergencies, between COVID, flu, bad weather, we've had some of that the last few years. So we have some cushion built in there as well. Any questions that you have for me?
Will the high school still do their Fridays late start?
They will, yes. So on a calculation chart that we have, the state requires that we count minutes based on the shortest amount of minutes each day. So Monday through Thursday, we count 450 minutes because that's what the elementary goes. And then on the days that it's a PHS late start, that's 420 minutes. That's Friday. And then our early release dates count as 360 minutes. So for those 2 days, we counted 360. So yes, they will have, that's a great question. They will have still the same time that they did this year.
That seems like a week earlier than we have, but then I see we've got still the fall break and really 3 weeks at Christmas, which is is longer. Am I looking at that right?
We started August 12th this year.
Oh, okay. So
So
maybe
we're
it's
right
pretty
about where
similar.
we started
Okay.
last year. We have 2 weeks at Christmas. The 20th through the 31st.
The biggest positive with this calendar is the October break being worked in. If you look at the month of August, we start, and then other than the 6th, you go from August all the way to November without a 3-day weekend or something to give you a break. So the fall break adds 3 days in. So if you compare this calendar to last year's calendar, it's about 3 days longer than this year. This year we end on a Friday. Next year, if we were to end in the same number of days as this year, we would end on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So we still end on a Friday. We don't need the bad weather day. We actually end on a Thursday. But minute-wise, we were counting minutes and cutting it close and coming back with kids on the day after spring break and all kinds of stuff because of crazy weather circumstances, so COVID and weather and everything else. So this way, you learn from previous years, and we just figured fall break was good for people. And the EIC reviewed this calendar prior to the meeting, prior to y'all seeing it, and they felt the October break was good. It just helps break up that one long period without anything.
We added the 3 days for fall break. We also added MLK. So that's 4 days that we added off this year that we did not have originally scheduled last year. We have, of course, accounted for those now, but
I was looking at that wrong. So we actually do come back on January 3rd.
yes,
We'll
ma'am.
have
Yes,
that
ma'am.
1 week and then the new 6
Right.
weeks. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So in May, what is the last day of instruction?
It will be the 25th if we don't need to use the minutes on the 26th. If we're short minutes, we have to put school on the 26th. But if we have all of our minutes and we're good, then the last day of instruction will be the 25th.
And usually after this weird weather at the end of April going into May, we have a pretty good idea of where we stand minute-wise. So we'll be able to announce before May 1, we hope, where we'll be at the end of the year, so principals can get the word out in time. But as we learned, it has been known to snow after spring break. That was the strangest thing I think I saw up in the Panhandle. So.
We have had this looked at by UIL. Ron Rhodes has submitted it to UIL. We meet UIL criteria. So when we create a calendar, we have to consider the 75,600 minutes. We have to consider 187 staff days through Brandy Merrick's office. And then we have to consider UIL stipulations, certain number of days in each grading period. So all of those things have been reviewed. We've also talked to Stephanie Woods for PEMS purposes and had that looked at as well.
So last year we had to come back because there was an issue with UIL. So this time again, all I's dotted, T's crossed, and it fits with what we need to do. So with that, I'd like to recommend consideration and approval of the 2021-22 instructional calendar.
Board, if there's no other questions, do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the 2021-22 calendar.
We have a motion by Ms. Bass. Do I hear a second? We have a second by Mr. James. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
All right, we'll begin working next on the employment calendar when people start coming back on the different contracts. And so we'll start communicating word to those folks now that we have y'all's approval on this, and we'll begin communicating start date for next year. All right, next item we have is the annual consideration and approval of the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills Certification. You'll note in your packet a list of all the instructional materials that we have. This certification just acknowledges that what we have purchased reflects and complies with the state curricula, which is the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. And it also assures that we will not purchase items that do not comply with state educational standards. And so with that, I'd like to recommend consideration and approval of the annual tax certification.
Board, any questions on this one? With no questions, do I hear a motion? We have a motion by Ms. Rivera. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. Bass. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next item we have is consideration and approval to purchase K-5 Social Studies instructional materials in English and Spanish. This is Social Studies Weekly in English and Spanish. If you'll see, one is for 4 years, which is English. Spanish is 6 years. It will not exceed $60,000. It's around the $56,000 neighborhood. What it does is it provides consumable materials for students with current events. It's difficult to update textbooks as often as things in our world change. So the social studies reader provides kind of a current events addendum to current events. And so there are 2 classes that we prepare for in Spanish, and the other ranges between 12 and 14 for English. Copies for the students. So, and this is kinder through 5th grade in both English and Spanish. So with that, I'd like to recommend consideration and approval to purchase K-5 Social Studies instructional materials in English and Spanish.
Board, any questions? No questions. Do I hear a motion?
To approve the purchase K through 5 social studies instructional materials in English.
We have a motion by Mr. James. Do I hear a second? We have a second by Mr. Soto. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0.
The next item we have is consideration and approval for selection of district auditor for the 2020-21 school year audit. Ike Bailey LLP has been our auditor for the last 3 years. This coming year, the audit, I did visit with Ms. Chapa, is a bit more engaged than previous years. And this next year, Ike Bailey will be reviewing all campus activity funds. And campuses have a tremendous amount of activity funds. So they also are having to review the next GASB, which is the Governmental Accounting Standards. They're going to have to review our compliance with our internal systems, internal controls, all our documentation. Does it comply with the new federal regulations pertaining to finance? In the same time, they're going to have to look through all of the activity funds. And activity funds, I mean, they will ask for the one strange receipt that you thought wasn't important to turn in. And then everybody's scrambling to try to find it. So that's next year, and it's just kind of how the draw goes. If you remember last year, they withheld the $1,100 increase. This next year, they stated they are proposing an additional $1,100 over the previous year, as they did say it will take a lot more time to review all of the activity funds from all of the different campuses in the district, as well as compliance with the new GASB standards. So with that, I'd like to recommend consideration approval for the selection of the district auditor for the 2020-2021 school year audit, which would be Ike Bailey.
Board, any questions on this one?
I may have missed it. How long have you said you used them?
We've used them for the last 3 years. However, they went under a different name before. They were local. The local entity sold out to this entity. This entity is based in Abilene.
Right.
Yeah.
Long.
It's been a long time. Now, they are different auditors. I mean, we get different auditors each year. They send in a different group, but it is the umbrella company bought the local company here. They retired, the gentleman that used to do it retired here.
Any other questions, board? No other questions? Do I hear a motion? We have a motion by Ms. Rivera. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. Bass. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0.
The next item on the agenda is consideration and approval for, the board resolution extending the depository contract. This depository contract is with Prosperity Bank. They, kind of like Ike Bailey, have been our depositor for a long time. But the relationship has been an extremely positive relationship. During COVID, when everything collapsed and interest rates dropped to historic lows, Prosperity Bank, and Mr. Glenn in particular, fought for Plainview ISD to ensure that the interest rate that they had offered, which was about 2%, that it would remain in effect until August when we renew. And we didn't know if it was going to be possible, but Mr. Glenn came back and told Ms. Chop and I that the bank had given us their word and that he had given us his word. And they didn't make any money off of that, but yet they did the right thing. And that speaks volumes to the character of the bank and its leadership and its management and Mr. Glenn's advocacy for the district. So with that, I'd like to recommend consideration and approval of the resolution extending the depository contract. Now, the new interest rate resets at 0.25 or 2.5 basis points, and that is half a basis point higher than anywhere else. And so even as low as the interest rates are, he's provided us half a basis points above what other depositories are providing at this point for long-term money.
Board, any questions? With no questions, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion on the approval of the board resolution extending the depository contract.
We have a motion by Mr. James. Do I hear a second? We have a second by Mr. Sudge. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
All right. Okay. The next item we have is purchase campus supplies using 2021, 2022 budget and approval of purchases over $50,000. You can take a look at how much each campus is requesting in your agenda item. It ranges from $5,000 to $11,000. It does include band at the high school as well as band at the middle school as well, and MTSS, the central office. So you can see the different requests. There are 2 vendors that are already approved vendors that campuses would like to use. This gives them a head start on the office supplies, ink cartridges, materials, paper, folders, and everything else that they purchase from those vendors that fall within the category of office supplies. You can see it's office-wise, the request is in bulk, $64,909.45. And then school specialty, there's a request from $13,539.69. And this is the Omnia contract. And just to ensure campuses have what they need ahead of time and to get at the front of the line, I'd like to recommend approval for campuses to purchase supplies using the 2021-22 budget with purchases over $50,000, since it's going to hit that $50,000 limit with all of them together.
Board, any questions? No questions, do I hear a motion?
I move to approve purchase campus supplies using the 2021-22 budget.
We have a motion by Ms. Bass, do I hear a second? We have a second by Mr. James. All in favor, raise your right hand. The motion carries.
All right, the next item we have is consider an approval to renew property, casualty, general liability, fleet, and educator legal liability insurance contract for the 2020-21 with the Texas Association of School Boards. You can see that the price is $389,405. It is an increase of 12.43% over the previous year, which is $43,059. This has been due, of course, to the $6 million in hail damage, vehicle damage, and everything else that occurred with the winter storm, so a lot of those claims were filed. We were fortunate that the only facility that had damage in our district was the Ash Gym, but we had approval and authorization to begin repair almost immediately. And insurance is one of those things that you get what you pay for. And they've taken good care of the district in every area in which they insure us. And their customer service has been good. I know the increase is there. It is, I guess, par for the course with other entities that we're insuring schools and hospitals as they experience the same challenges that we experience with frozen lines, pipes, and everything else. Last year, we recommended $59,750 additional to buy down the deductible from $500,000 to $250,000 for wind and hail damage. And my analogy, it's as soon as you drop full coverage off your car, you have a car accident. And so my hesitancy would be, of all the years we drop off the extra coverage and we find ourselves with a $500,000 deductible. So I'm going to recommend the full $155,000 coverage for Plainview ISD. And as you can see, it covers property, casualty, general liability, fleet, educator, legal liability. So it covers all of that. And it is an extensive policy. So with that, I'd like to recommend consideration approval to renew the property, casualty, general liability, fleet, and educator legal liability insurance contract for 2020-2021 with the Texas Association of School Boards, including the additional $59,750 to buy down the deductible from $500,000 to $250,000.
Board, any questions on this one?
Is that something that they've always done? When the purchase done the buying down of the deductible?
No, sir, they started that last year because they increased, the deductible used to be 2 years ago, $100,000. And then last year, because of the increase in damage due to hail, they increased the deductible to $500,000 with this option to buy down to $250,000.
So this would be the first year that we're buying down to the 250.
The second year.
Second year. Yes, ma'am. I mean, that hailstorm in Texas did hit them by surprise. And if you saw the news about I think they called it gorilla hail that hit in Llano, Texas, which looked like a softball. I'm sure Llano uses TASB, and so if one side of the state gets hit pretty hard, the whole state pays for it. But that's just kind of the nature of insurance. No, you're fine.
Any other questions, board? With no other questions, do I hear a motion? We have a motion by Ms. Rivera. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. Bass. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
All right. Next item we have is consideration and approval of board member certified training credits. The official minutes of the last regular meeting must reflect training that has been received by each board member. Traditionally, the reporting period is 12-month period, starting from the month of Plainview Independent School District Board elections, May 1 to May 1 of the following year. At this point in time, every board member has met the training requirements, and many of you have gone well beyond. And by statute, we have to read your hours, and our board president will do that.
Okay, it says I got 33 hours, 75 minutes. Adam, 50.25. Amber, 31.50. Veronica Salazar, 16.25. Sophia Rivera, 39.50. Joanne Ray, 18.50. And Tyler James, 18.25. And I think yours was already updated in this.
So with that, I'd like to recommend consideration and approval of board minutes and board member certified training credits.
Board, any questions on your hours? I have to say that I'm competitive on hours, and I'm not happy that Adam beat me. I did not realize he was that high.
I got nothing else to do.
Well,
Okay,
I'm doing the MASPA meetings on every Monday, but Dr. Sanchez keeps calling me to his office to have meetings during lunchtime, so I missed.
should be.
Do I
Should be.
hear, I should. Okay, do I hear a motion? Oh, wait a second, yes. With no other questions, yeah.
I so move.
We have a motion by Ms. Bass, do I hear a second? We have a second by Ms. Rivera, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0.
I would like to remind on this agenda item, the board to take a look at the information that Rosie gave you regarding the summer training and workshops. So there's no time to get a head start on your hours for the next go-around. The summer training in San Antonio will be somewhat wide open. It'll be a lottery, so if you're interested, I don't know how they're gonna do it, if it's gonna be like the lotto where the little ball pops up with the district's name on it, but they're gonna randomly select which districts get to go in person, and if you're not selected in person, then it's online. They're still talking about, TASB and the big conference and what that's gonna look like. Nothing really has come out on that as of yet, so they're still talking through that. But if you're interested, let Rosie or I know, and that way we can get how many ever of you interested signed up, so we can put the name in and see if our number comes up. All right, and that one's in San Antonio. Let's see.
That one's in Fort Worth, isn't it?
Well, there's one in Fort Worth and one in San
Fort
Antonio.
Worth is a virtual.
Yeah, Fort Worth virtual, San Antonio's somewhat in person. Okay, the next item we have is Hb3 Ccmr. CCMR, of course, is the abbreviation for College and Career Military Readiness. House Bill 3 is the funding mechanism. If you'll remember, tax rates were compressed a couple of years ago. The legislature said we'll make up the difference. In making up the difference, they never give you money without strings. And so part of the strings attached are we as a district have to establish 5-year goals and targets, and then we have to build a plan to meet those 5-year goals and targets. Fortunately, with CCMR, we've done an exceptional job in this area, and a lot of weight goes into this, and as a district, we benefited from just the collaborative energy in focusing on CCMR, and so Ms. Straley will go over where we are, how we look compared to the state, what our long-term goals are, and definitely we're setting the standard here.
Yes, good evening. It is my privilege to get to come and share our goals, and they are very lofty goals, but very attainable for our district. We work with a wonderful staff, administrators, counselors, teachers. Our students have really become excited and passionate about what we are offering in Plainview, and so it's neat to get to look at these goals. Just to remind you, in concert with what Dr. Sanchez was talking about, CCMR incentives allow the district to earn additional funds to prepare our students for college, career, and military, is what we're looking at here. The purpose of these goals being set that the state is encouraging us to do is to help ensure that we are meeting that state plan that's set by the Texas Education Code for at least 60% of all adults ages 25 to 34 in Texas to achieve a post-secondary degree or workforce credential by 2030. So that is the Texas goal, and these are how public schools work towards that goal. And then, of course, House Bill 3 is also in line with the Texas Education Agency's strategic plan that every child is prepared to be successful in college, career, or military. And then I think even our board commitments are that every student can succeed. So these are just a variety of ways that we succeed even beyond the classroom. So to start with, let's just jump in and see where we are. In 2020, we ended up with 83% of our graduates meeting the CCMR percentage. So when we go ahead and step that out for the next 5 years, our goal is to have 88% of our graduates meeting that CCMR criteria. If you look down below where it says closing the gaps, you will notice we break out that percentage by student group. The top row is 2020. As you work down, we go all the way to 2024. And I want you to draw your eyes to the gray bar across the bottom of the screen. It says CTG 2020 targets. The gray bar is where the state says, we want you here. Now, lift your eyes up the chart to see where we are in 2020. We have done an exceptional job of making sure every single student, regardless of your background, has an opportunity to achieve college, career, military readiness goals. Like I said, it's just a privilege. We have a lot of people who work really hard to help make sure our kids have these opportunities. Like I said, the counselors, the campus administrators, and then our teachers have really stepped up. They've gone to training. They have bought into looking at what we offer, streamlining that, making sure our classes build. They give credentials for workplace as well as opportunities to get into elite programs at the college level. And that is all student groups. So you'll notice a few of our percentages kind of stay still a year or two. If you look at our EL population, my goodness, how do you do better than 100%? So you can see we are truly setting the standard in this area, and kudos to all of the people that come together to make this happen for our kids. Now we're going to break this down into all the pieces that count towards those numbers. One of the goals that we look at for college career ready is the TSI, ACT, and some of our kids take SAT as well, but we offer ACT to every junior in the district. And then we also offer a college prep course. So our goal is to increase from 70% of our students meeting this goal to 75% by 2025. A few things we also want to consider here. CCMR data is lagging data. So these numbers actually come from what happened in 2018 and was presented in the 2019 taper. So every time you look at CCMR, recognize it's not our current kids, it was previous kids. Because they wait to get all those industry certifications calculated before it goes into the next data set. So just so you know, a few things we're doing here in Plainview. We are working to increase TSI. We're moving that down to the 8th grade level. With the addition of our early college high school program, that is going to significantly help us in this area. ACT, 2 years ago, we brought in Mastery Prep. We've been training all of our core academic teachers on ACT strategies so that they are embedded in our core academic classrooms. College Prep is a class that's offered at the senior level. It is embedded into English 4. So if you take English 4, you automatically get this additional help and support. If you take Advanced Quantitative Reasoning, we call that AQR, that is our math class that is college prep. So our teachers work with South Plains. They get additional curriculum that they embed into our Texas curriculum that just helps those kids be ready for that college level English and math class. So that is embedded. It also occurs at ASH as well. So it does not matter which school you're at. If you're in those classes, you're going to get that additional benefit to help you be successful. The next part of CCMR is dual credit. So right now, we do offer an English 3 and English 4 that are dual credit. If a student takes one of those classes, they can reach this goal. If you're in a math class, right now, I believe we offer 2 math classes for dual credit. Next year, I know the high school was already expressing, we'll have a teacher that she may end up teaching dual credit all day long. So it will be multiple math classes that kids can get into and take that could count towards this area. With the addition of Wayland and Angelo State options, this is just going to increase our opportunities. The 9 hours in any subject, this can be like social studies. So if a kid takes U.S. history, economics, and government, that would reach this goal. CTE classes can also come in this area. And again, our early college high school is just going to explode this opportunity. We will have a lot of children having many more possibilities that they can choose from to fit their schedule. We are a little low in this one. You'll see that we've been at 17%. Our goal is to get to 22. That is not going to be a problem with early college high school. And with the addition of Angelo State with Wayland, we're going to have a robust opportunity for kids. Industry-based certifications, this is usually what we think of when we think of career. You've seen in here, Jimmy Fikes has come in talking about his MOS certifications. We've talked about welding certifications, our CNA program, our pharmacology program. This is where the lagging data really shows up, because that 5% may seem really small to you because you've heard those huge numbers presented in here. We aren't seeing those numbers show up yet in our data. They'll be coming, because this is 2018 data showing up on this 2019 taper. So just know that it's coming. We just have to give ourselves some time for the data to catch up with where we're actually functioning today. So again, we've talked about some of the things that we're already doing, we're already working towards. We will continue to expand these opportunities as we figure out how this is working. Part of the industry-based certifications as well is we do offer certifications that are recognized federally, but not on the state list. We do have conversations about what is good for kids. Even if it doesn't count on the accountability report, we're going to offer good things for kids. We just want to make sure as many opportunities as we can on the state list, we want to get those embedded in our coursework. So we'll continue to do that as well in your industry-based certifications. And then early college is going to help with ACT, TSI, and that dual credit piece. So this is our last slide. If you want to see how the state compares to our district, for that CCMR student achievement, you can see we are well above the state for that particular piece. In terms of what they consider college-ready graduates, again, we are well above the state. Dual credit, we talked about, we're a little bit low there, but because of the opportunities that we have on the horizon, this number is going to go up significantly, no doubts. Same thing with the IBCs. As we start getting to count in all of those additional certifications we're now offering, those numbers are going to expand as well. The last row I did want to draw your attention to, part of our large increase in our numbers that we looked at on that first slide is due to we get credit, or we have been getting credit, for a coherent sequence of classes, which means we've worked very closely with high school, with ASH. We've made sure every class we offer stacks and builds, and so we got credit for that. This school year, that goes away. You no longer get those points. So just because a kid took the class and stayed in that program of study the whole way doesn't matter. They have to actually pass that industry-based certification to get the credit now. So that is why it's just so important that our classes stack, our curriculum is vertically aligned, which we've been doing, that our teachers are ready, they know what's ahead, our teachers are getting trained to offer even more industry certifications. So we are proactive. We've been working towards this. The counselors have really been helping to make sure the kids follow through that sequence. And so we know we're sitting in the right spot, but that bottom line does go away. So that number does come out in the future. We just need to be aware of that. And that's all we have. So any questions?
I do want to give you a bit of information that's additional to this that we continue to work through to even make the dual credit annual graduate number even larger. Of course, early college high school is going to increase that number tremendously, but we're also taking a look at something that we haven't looked at in the past, and it was kind of an aha moment, that if we have our instructors teaching the class, we're looking at Angelo State University as an adjuncting option, because if you think about it, if we're paying the salary of the teacher, then we should get a tuition break for the parents, because they've already paid by paying the salary of the teacher through their taxes. So we're working with Angelo State on that because there are other districts and entities that if the instructor's on your payroll and you're paying them, then there's a difference in the cost because you're paying the instructor versus if you are using one of their instructors and you're not paying their instructor. So we're in conversations with both Wayland and Angelo State to find out what's the best option for our families. There are some districts that if you meet a certain criteria, even if you're not in early college high school, you pay nothing for certain courses if the instructor's on faculty. So we are taking some trips to the Rio Grande Valley. There are quite a few early college high school models there to figure out how we can do even better and make dual credit course enrollment more accessible. So that's something that's very positive. The other thing that I want to mention to you on the certification or the certificate bearing courses is the legislature is considering legislation currently that not all classes are created equal. So if you get a bunch of kids in intro classes today, they're funded the same as the upper level classes. The way the legislature is moving is if you get a bunch of intro kids, it'll be funded less than the upper level classes. So the incentive is to make sure they get to the upper level classes. So junior, senior year, they're not taking some intro level class. We're going to have to be very purposeful and ensure that we get them in something they're interested in so they get to the upper level class and stay there. The other thing Mr. Straley mentioned that we're going to have to work on is Mr. Fikes as well as Mr. Brundage. They do an amazing job with certification. Their kids are getting certifications all the time. We're going to have to ensure that happens in the other courses too. That you just don't take it because it's a fun class, but you need to take it to get your personal trainer certification or your teacher's assistant, whatever you're in, you need to walk out with a certification or it's not going to help us accountability-wise and help them. So if you look at the intent of the legislature, I don't frown upon it, but basically what they're saying is it doesn't do any good to take the class if you're not certified to go out and get a job. So if you're going to take the class, let's get you certified so you can get out and get a job instead of taking the class and mess around. So the good thing about our CT instructors, by and large, they have a lot of pride in what they do. We're just going to have to ensure that as we hire CT instructors, we let them know, we need you to get trained and certified to offer the assessments for certification in your particular area. And if you're not willing to do that, then we have to find personnel who are, because it's not just a state mandate, but it's right for the students. You should never take anything that you don't get a certification for if it is that rigorous. So those are some things to bear in mind. These are the goals that we have set. I mean, you know, as we shared, we're well above and beyond what the state is tracking. This is a point of pride for Plainview Independent School District. And so with that, I'd like to recommend consideration and approval of the Hb3 Ccmr district outcome goals.
Board, any questions on any of this?
I just have one question. On the 65%, do we know what that would be on the CTE coherent sequence? Do we know what that number would be if, like, we were to, if the students
If we
that
took
are
it out.
making up to 65 would have had to have taken?
You know, I have not calculated that. I mean, we can, because it's part of
I don't know, I'm
each
just
of those
saying, you know,
goals.
that way you
No.
could
Yeah, so we would
start-
kind of have an idea.
Kind of know
Mhm.
where you're at.
Yeah, no, definitely. It is something that we could take a look at to
We do
see.
need to.
I know right now, when we've looked a little bit, they have what's called a CCMR outcome bonus, and that's based on how you're doing compared to the state, and if you meet more than one of those goals apiece. And when I looked at that a few weeks ago, we were doing very well, which encouraged me that it's not just the sequence, we're hitting several of them. You only get credit for one, but that outcome bonus actually gives you a financial incentive if you hit more than one. And we are going to receive financing in several areas for having multiple indicators. So yeah,
But that is a number that we can get together, and as soon as we get it, I'll send it to you all, because it is something we need to know. I mean, where are we now? What's that starting point? So,
Did I understand correct on the college prep course? I don't know if I understood or maybe it was the wording. Senior level, it's a senior level English 4. Do all students get that or just certain students?
so if you have not met one of the indicators. Your TSI score is not high enough, your ACT score is not high enough, you've not met an industry certification, then the counselors make sure those kids get in those classes. If you have met one of those other goals, then you don't necessarily have to have that class. Now, if you're taking English 4, you just get the benefit of it. So it is meant to be that safety net, because we know for whatever reason, the kids are not reaching that college career readiness in any of the other areas. So this is one way we can help you out by making sure you get that English or that math support.
So by the end of their senior year, every senior should have had something?
Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly right. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, Board? Okay. Did you already make?
Yes, ma'am. Made the recommendation.
Okay, do I hear a motion with no other questions?
I move to approve the CCMR for the 20 district, or the district outcome goals.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Bass. Do I hear a second? We have a second by Mr. James. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. The next item we have is consideration approval of application for modified schedule state assessment testing days. Requested years are the 21, 22, 23 school year. This is just to modify the schedule of classes for students who are not being tested to report to and attend school after state assessment testing periods have ended, therefore reducing the number of interruptions during testing periods. This is only for the high school. This doesn't apply to elementary or middle. And this is something that's a current practice. This is a waiver we just have to apply for every so often to continue to have that flexibility and allowance. So with that, I'd like to recommend consideration approval for application for modified schedule state assessment testing days.
Board, any questions on this? No questions. Do I hear a motion? We have a motion by Ms. Rivera. Do I hear a second? We have a second by Mr. Soto. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
The next item is consideration approval of Hb3 district and campus goals. These are for elementary, so you saw high school. House Bill 3, the legislature also said, well, we want some literacy goals. If you'll remember, we asked last year for your permission to send a cadre of teachers to the service center for literacy training. This also helps fund in the upcoming year, full-day pre-K. So anytime you're given extra money, as we said before, there are some strings. So what you'll see here will be our numeracy and literacy goals in elementary that begin at the pre-K level.
Okay, good evening. Okay, so I am going to go over what actually House Bill 3 is, just to kind of recap what Dr. Sanchez said. I'm going to show some goals much like what Straley did, and then I'm going to switch to an Excel document and show you where we arrived at those numbers. And then from there, I'm going to share a campus with you. So for the first slide, our scorecard, currently we're using iStation to report as our early reading indicator. So for Tier 3, for kindergarten through 5th grade, our hope is to just to move that percentage to 2% by 2021 at the end of the year, knowing that we had COVID as our battle this year. Okay, so what is House Bill 3? Much like what they have already talked about, we are required to adopt the early childhood literacy and math. With that, we have to have an annual review at the board, needs to be posted, as well as it has to be specific, quantifiable, and annual goals over the course of 5 years. And it also has to be done for each campus. So within that, the plan has to include the aggregate student growth for 3rd grade math and reading STAR. So we have 5 years that we will stretch this goal out to show growth in 3rd grade in both reading and math over that course of time. It also, just much like what Robin Straley introduced, it does too have annual targets for each of the student underneath the Closing the Gaps domain, which you will see that will boil down to our EL, our SPED, each of the ethnicities, so on and so forth, much like our accountability does. Okay, so with that, we have to have targeted professional development for classroom teachers in pre-kindergarten through third grade for campuses not identified as meeting those goals. We also have to consider the unique needs of students in bilingual education as well as special education. All right, so let's jump into what does that mean. So here is our reading. We started the percentage at the meets level. So within the accountability system, you have the approaches, meets, and masters. So this is taking it at the meets level. So we are hoping to have we would like for our STAR meets reading level to increase from a 28% to a 50% by June of 2025. So with that, we created small increments of percentage increase over the course of those 5 years. Down at the bottom, much like what Robin had said also, includes our closing the gaps, and that is where we look at each of the different domains within the accountability. So with that, I do have to say that we worked very diligently as a team to arrive at these numbers. So that team included myself, Mrs. Pardo, Mrs. Sanchez, as well as Brandy Tyree, to arrive at these scores. So here is math, same thing, same scenario in terms of third grade. At the meets level or above, we hope to increase from a 27% to a 50%. In just a moment, I will explain where those numbers came from, where that number 27 come from, and why we chose the magic number of 50. So still at the bottom, we then would, same situation on the closing the gaps. You can see that each of the domains have a stepped increase to that overall 2025 goal. Okay, so during that time, we do want to progress monitor. So starting at a 28% with third grade and boiling it down to what that means for second grade, first grade, kindergarten, and ultimately pre-K. So with that, each year we're hoping to see an increase, which means that we hope to start at the bottom and then shift upward. So third grade starting at that 28, second grade at the 30, at the 34, first grade at 39, kindergarten at 45, and then ultimately landing at that 50% mark in pre-K. So these goals, I'm going to go back to this slide, where we got those goals or those percentages ultimately came from that third grade target. So how we're going to progress monitor is much like what we present to you on the developmental reading assessment. That assessment has been used in the district now for multiple years. We use that starting in kindergarten and working our way up to even fifth grade using this to get an overall, I believe probably even Amber used that when you were in the classroom as well. So for pre-K, we do use the circle assessment to arrive at that number as well. So for math, what we use in math for progress monitoring will be the Imagine Math benchmark assessment. We currently have used Imagine Math in the district for several years in third through fifth. So this year would be new for pre-K through second grade. So what does that mean for the early childhood professional development? Much like what you approved last year during about this time actually, you approved the TEA reading academies that K through 3 teachers attended. Many of them will complete their first round this year. And so they have worked very hard to complete their modules throughout the year. It's been a great learning experience for teachers, and we will be going for round 2 for reading academies next year. So we are also building campus capacity through PLCs facilitated by campus principals and instructional coaches. So we do facilitate PLCs being professional learning communities. That's where we do a lot of our data desegregation, and then looking at CFAs where we need to take students next in their learning process. We do have district content planning for reading and math that we do once a 6 weeks for every grade level, all subjects. There is instructional coaching for teachers, as well as the district-specific needs to bilingual ESL in our exceptional education. Okay, so just to recap all of this, what does that mean? We hope that we can go from a 28% to a 34% by June of 2022. So overall, that is the third grade goals that we have set. Now, I'm sure you're wondering where we got those percentages. So Dr. Richburg, if you will switch over to our Excel document so I can explain briefly on how we got there. Okay, so this chart looks pretty similar. Dr. Richburg, if you'll go to the next tab over. So what we did is we took a summarized look at our reading and math for third grade at that meets level. So we took that, and if you'll tab over to the next one where it says math rationale. So then we wanted to do much like what even CCMR did, which was look at the taper. So we took multiple years of the taper to get an average of that. But then if you look at the right side of it, we ended up, what we settled on was we took the 2019-20 taper, and at the meets level, we were sitting at a 34%. We used our summarized CBAs, our curriculum-based assessments that we do present to you in the form of data, and we summarized that at the meets level and ultimately got about 21%. Got an average of the two, and it was about 27%. So we know that we would love to be a B in this district. Like, that is our overall goal. That's what we're striving for. That's what we want for our students. So how do we get a B when it boils down to approaches, meets, and masters? Well, what that means is you take these numbers, add them up, divide them by 3 to get the overall goal. So in order to be a B, we have to have an 80% in approaches, 50% in meets, and a 20% in masters in order to get that B. So that's where that magic number of 50 comes in on that meets level. So in order to take that, we took the taper and our meets, subtracted them to kind of get a raw number, and then divided that over the course of 5 years to ultimately get our increases. So then if you look down at the bottom, we took about like that 5%, and we had to go from that 27, because if you'll scroll up for just a second, so that 27 mark, that where his mouse is moving, that's where we boiled it down to like our baseline, our starting point. And then our 50% being our goal. Now if you scroll down to more of that table is what you saw then in the PowerPoint. So then we made those increments of growth over the course of the 5 years. So if you then, Brent, Dr. Hirschberg, excuse me, if you will scroll over all the way to the end, or I'm sorry, on the tabs, you will see that we did the same process. Mrs. Tyree, Mrs. Sanchez, Mrs. Pardo, we looked at SPED, our ex-ed department, and basically did the same thing, knowing that their domain 3 target, which is the closing the gap section, was at a 19% for meets. That's the target set by the federal government. So we have to get to that 19%. We found that average, did the same process, and then the same thing for our English language learners, which is the next tab over from the ex-ed. We did the very same process. Yes, that's it. So then it's the 29%, same process. So you now know how we came up with those numbers and how we made those incremental climbs. So Dr. Richburg, I'll let you either minimize that and then go back to, we're gonna share with you then, we walk through the same process with each of the campuses. So what we did is we scheduled then meetings because they too have to have these same goals presented. So we drew up the document that looks much like this, and the closing the gaps that looks like that, and walked through the same process with campuses. And we just we went around and made just individual meetings, Mrs. Pardo, Mrs. Tyree, Mrs. Sanchez, myself, and created these goals based on their data. So I will just start clicking through. You'll see where the slides are very much the same. This is the exact same information. This was presented to teachers so that they knew they knew what the goals were. They knew how we were going to get there. So ultimately, this is College Hill's data, and we took College Hill based on their taper, their summarized CBAs, just like I showed you on the Excel document, and started with 2021 to get that 22%, but our goal is still 50. That didn't change across the district. So then we made our, what do we have to do if this is our starting point? What do we have to do to get to that 50%? Same situation then on the closing the gaps. Mrs. Glenn boiled down her data to then represent each of her closing the gap domains to what you see on the chart. And same situation with math. She and her campus hope to take their students in third grade by 2025 to get to that 50% mark, starting out at 27%. Same situation, they will be using, we say as an acronym DRA, but it is Developmental Reading Assessment. We use that so interchangeably. They would too start at that 22% mark at that meets level, and then ultimately work down to pre-K to get that 50%. Same thing with math, using Imagine Math as our benchmark assessment. So we are looking at the same thing, campus to district. And then of course, this is the same because we are making a unified effort to promote student learning through professional development for teachers. And that is it. Any questions?
Now, the reason that you see individual plans for each campus is each campus has to make progress because we're merging campuses.
Right.
So we are proceeding because it is statute with the existing 6 campuses. However, if each of the 6 campuses do their work in moving students forward as their plans propose, when we merge campuses, we just continue the work. Now, we will have to come back to you once we merge campuses, and we'll have to re-present this to you again because we'll have a lot of kids from 2 campuses, but we'll have other kids coming in from some of the other, based on the way the attendance zones will be drawn. So once we get that baseline data, take a look at all the students, we'll have to come back, and this piece will have to be amended when we do open up the merged campuses. But this is our starting point now, and so we proceed as if these are the arrangements going forward among the 6 campuses. So with that, I'd like to recommend consideration and approval of HB3 district and campus goals.
Board, any questions? No questions, do I hear a motion? We have a motion by Mr. Soto, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. Bass. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
All right. Okay. The next item we have is consideration and approval for Plainview ISD Education Foundation. And what this allows would be the expenditure of funds in support of setting up the Education Foundation. So this is a not to exceed item. And what we're looking at is your authority for Underwood Law Firm, which is our general counsel, to begin filing for 501c3 status as well as a certificate of formation with the comptroller, the Texas Comptroller's Office, as well as beginning the establishment of bylaws so that an education foundation can then be formed. So we're looking at 2 things. One is the approval of a very long resolution that I will read here in a second, not to my pleasure or yours, but I need to read it into the record. And the second is a contract with Play It Forward, which were the two gentlemen that came in and presented that they would then begin once our once our non-for-profit status as well as certificate of formation are in, they begin raising money on behalf of the district. So let me read the resolution. It's long. Okay, I'm gonna try to do it like an auctioneer, but I don't know. At a lawfully called meeting on April 15, 2021, pursuant to its authority under the Texas Education Code, the Board of Trustees, the Board of the Plainview Independent School District, the district, does hereby make the following resolution regarding the expenditure of public funds for the support of an education foundation within the district. Whereas the board believes that supporting a local education foundation benefits the district, its students, and the community in the following ways. One, provides encouragement and motivation to students in academic achievement, including offering opportunities for academic scholarships for students as well as other academic opportunities, including programs to assist students in preparation for higher education admission process. Two, supports academic excellence by generating funds that will enable the district to meet students' academic needs that fall outside of school district budgets. Three, provide opportunities for school faculty, including programs for teacher education and teacher grants, which will provide support for educator development and excellence. Four, provide a positive cause for local community engagement in public education through participation, promotion of charitable gifts and volunteer activities. And five, provide an avenue for local businesses to support district students and teachers through tax deductible gifts. And whereas the district has always been and will remain committed to providing the best possible education opportunities for its students while at the same time being good stewards of available public funds. And whereas the district expenditure in support of such educational opportunities will be expended from resources or assets other than district currently possesses. And whereas the Texas Attorney General has recently reconfirmed that a public school district support of an educational foundation could be locally considered as a necessary and appropriate expenditure and the conduct of public schools to serve the school district's public purpose. Texas Attorney General Letter Opinion Number KP-0204, 2021. And whereas the board believes, reaffirms, and finds that expending funds in support of an education foundation necessary or appropriate in the conduct of the public school, and such support is provided in order to further a legitimate public purpose because such support offers encouragement and motivation to students in the district and the community of Plainview to pursue academic achievement. And whereas the Texas Attorney General has opined that the encouragement and motivation of students in academic achievement would seem to be appropriate function of the public free schools, Texas Attorney General Letter Opinion Number 93-93, 1993. And now, be it therefore resolved that the statements contained in the preamble of this resolution are true and correct and adopted as finding of fact and operative provisions hereof, and that the Board of Trustees of District support the expenditure of funds as a district effort that is necessary and appropriate in the conduct of public schools and structured for further a legitimate public purpose. And be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees for the district makes the following finding regarding the expenditure of public funds in support of an education foundation. Finding expending district funds in support of an education foundation is a necessary or appropriate expenditure in the conduct of public schools and serves the district's public purpose because of the following. One, the expenditure's predominant purpose is to benefit the district by furthering its objective of providing encouragement, motivation, district students, and academic achievement, not to benefit private parties. Two, the district will retain sufficient control over the expenditure to ensure that the public purpose is accomplished. Three, the district will receive significant benefit, including those listed in the preamble of this resolution associated with a more encouraged, motivated, and inspired student body and community. And four, the long-time benefits of financial resources the district will receive from such an education foundation will greatly exceed the cost to assist with the creation of such a foundation. And be it further resolved that the board authorizes expenditures relating to the district proposal of support of education foundation shall not exceed $40,000. And be it further resolved that the board hereby authorizes district administration to take any and all necessary to carry out such expenditures of local school funds, including school-related activities funds, gates, receipts, and/or general revenue not designated for a specific purpose, and support an education foundation and otherwise carry out the desires of the board as set forth in this resolution. This resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage, and it is so resolved. Passed and approved on, it would of course be today, and it would need the signature of the board, secretary and president, if the board passes. All right, so that's a whole lot of legal language from Underwood Law Firm that basically says we're asking for the board's approval to kickstart the Education Foundation, but that after the Education Foundation is kickstarted, the Education Foundation will have representation from this board to maintain control, to make sure that the funds do benefit the district, students, and teachers. But the board will also, through its bylaws of the Education Foundation, manage what those fundraising activities would be. And the two gentlemen that presented talked about some of the fundraising activities. But it would be the membership of this board, one or two board members, plus the board members that would be part of the Education Foundation Board that would determine not just fundraising targets, but appropriate use of those funds to benefit, as the resolution stated, students and staff. No private entities and not the district. It has to be about helping individual teachers and helping individual students. So currently, if scholarships are given, the ability to deduct them is somewhat questionable, but if they're donated through a non-for-profit 501(c)(3), then they give them the receipt, they manage it all, and it's not a function of the district, it becomes a function of the Education Foundation. One other example is Excel Energy has a grant that they give. Well, they wouldn't give it to PISD because we're not a non-for-profit. However, we're looking at applying for this grant for the early college high school, and if there were an Education Foundation, then we could apply for the grant. It would go to the Education Foundation and be designated for the purpose of the early college high school. Therefore, it would be allowed to be given to the early college high school for appropriate costs. So that's the benefit. There are a lot of entities that give money, but they won't unless you have non-for-profit status. And we can't take money because then it becomes district funds, and it's under all of the scrutiny and requirements of governmental accounting standards, that if you're a non-for-profit, there's a different set of standards that allows those funds to benefit a student. So I'll give you kind of the big example that everybody knows. Why does the PTO raise money? So that they can buy kids t-shirts for field day. Can we buy kids t-shirts for field day? No, we can't. Why? Because that's a gift to public fund, because they walk away with a t-shirt. Otherwise, they'd have to give the t-shirt back. So that's why the PTO raises the funds. So what an Education Foundation allows is, now the PTO doesn't have to raise it, the Education Foundation does. If they apply for it, get the money for the t-shirt, t-shirts go home with the kids because it's from a non-for-profit. So I guess, in short, it provides teachers, principals, and students an avenue to have access to charitable donations. It also provides those companies, entities, and individuals an opportunity to provide funding to a non-for-profit that does benefit their giving requirement. Different large companies have a giving requirement, but it only counts if it goes to a non-for-profit. So that's a whole lot of stuff. And again, this would be something that Underwood Law Firm would manage and would guide. And then, as I mentioned, there would be agenda item, once everything's established, for the board to determine which two members would serve as the board representation on the Education Foundation. Then, working with the Education Foundation consultants would determine which other members in the community need to be part of that board. Then, once that board is established, the bylaws are ratified by that board, it takes off. So if you will, we're a dock, and once that board is established and the bylaws are ratified by that board, it pushes off from this dock and it's not ours. At that point, it belongs to, under the purview of that board, just like any other non-for-profit functions. United Way functions in that manner, and there are various others. American Heart Association, they all function with bylaws and boards. It's a lot of excitement. So with that, I'd like to recommend the resolution, and anybody that wants to reread it all can, or you can just recommend the resolution.
Board, any other questions on this?
I just was gonna ask about, so what does this do for booster clubs and PTOs locally until we get this built up? Those individual schools and sports.
Sure, they continue to function, but at the point in time this is built up, at that point, then there can be a collective effort. Now, I will say in other districts that they still do operate booster clubs and they still operate those for specific purposes, but every once in a while, I'll give you an example, an education foundation will hold a large event, like a concert. And so the booster clubs pitch in and they provide volunteers to help pull the concert off. Then before the concert proceeds are earned, a priori, they determine how much each entity is going to get based on the number of volunteers. So they come up with an agreement. They all volunteer, they all pitch in, whatever they raise, they divide it out. And the board, of course, supports and votes on the division of those funds that would come in to be given out to these other non-for-profit entities. So they can work in concert, or until it's all moving, they can continue to work to secure their own individual purposes. But with an education foundation in place, instead of selling cards and all these other things, that energy can be pulled together. Those targets with that board and those boosters can be set, and then they all go out and pursue maybe fewer fundraisers that raise more money, and then it's divided among the different entities. Again, that would be under the purview of that board and in collaboration with anyone that they would entertain.
So those two men that came and visited with us then hopefully would meet with the coaches, band directors, those kinds of things. Get those clubs on board to all be in one direction. Is the idea here?
The first thing that they'll do is they will take the bylaws, assemble the board, ratify the bylaws after making any amendments and adjustments. That contract is 12 months. At that point in time, the board can continue their relationship with the two gentlemen and pay them from the money that the Education Foundation raises, because at that point, PISD would be out of it. Or they could say, we appreciate y'all helping us get this far. We're going to go ahead and open a position for a executive director to run this full-time. And at that point then, instead of renewing a contract, they could hire an executive director, or they could renew the contract and renegotiate the terms. Once that entity is established, it really takes over at that point. And then, just like you direct me, that board would direct either the two partners or a executive if that's the direction they choose to go. So it really comes down to the character of the people working together to determine if they're happy and satisfied with the consultants, or they'd like to have their own executive after the 12-month contract expires.
Yeah, I think that's just gonna be kind of the key part of this is just communicating with parents and businesses that are used to giving and used to a certain way of conducting book fairs and football cards and band. I know their booster club is huge. Communicating that so that we're all working together in the same direction, because it's been done.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the bylaws are where it's laid out that there's a function of coexistence, and then there's a function of individual fundraising campaigns. So coexistence could be that the booster clubs want to still do their thing and raise a certain amount of money. Okay, so there's a coexistence piece, but then the Education Foundation could have its major fundraiser or its major banquet or its major gala, whatever they choose. And at that point, they can choose to either do it on their own and then give out as they choose, or they could choose to accept the volunteer support of other entities and then divide out the proceeds. So, as Mr. Soto stated, as well as Ms. Bass, there has to be coordination, collaboration, and communication, but it also needs to be detailed in the bylaws by that board. So there's a lot of work that goes into ensuring it, which is why you bring on the consultants for them to begin working and navigating that, because the board doesn't have time to oversee the day-to-day. That would be the purpose of the consultants. Or if they're not satisfied with the consultants, the executive, if they choose to go that route. And if you have the right people, it takes care of itself. And in most cases, it does. And the gentleman that came in with Play It Forward both do this in their day job. They do fundraising in their day job.
Any other comments or questions? Do I hear a motion? We have a motion by Ms. Rivera. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. Bass. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
In a very positive way, we've already had a few people reach out and state they'd like to designate some memorial scholarships on behalf of individuals. And so we'll get to work. We'll do our part as a district in setting up what needs to be done so that those scholarships and other things can be established by those private entities. And we've had more than a few reach out and say, as soon as you have the Ed Foundation going, let us know. We'd like to have some scholarship for kids and the name of loved ones and friends. So, thank you for that. That's we have work to do, but we'll get it done. All right, the next item we have is consent agenda. Consent agenda is minutes and a budget amendment. The budget amendment is housekeeping, balancing out accounts and ensuring that negative balances don't exist. It's budget amendment 3, which does speak to the kind of job that the finance department does. I've been in districts where we're at budget amendment 25. So this shows how well a job they do, that we're only at the 3rd budget amendment in a full year. It's impressive. So with that, I'd like to recommend the consensus agenda as presented.
Board, any questions on the consensus? No questions. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion on that.
We have a motion by Mr. James. Do I hear a second? We have a second by Mr. Soto. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
At this point in time, just for the purpose of consideration of professional employment contracts, administrative employment contracts, and action to be taken under the package, just a very, very brief executive session to ensure that everybody is on the same page with that.
Are we doing 13?
Ms. 13. Let me see. I'm looking for it on mine, and yeah, I'll look at it on yours. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that a little bit too, if
Okay.
y'all don't mind. If we can talk about
That's fine.
13 before we come back out. Yeah, I want to talk about that too. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
All right, let me read this right quick before we get in trouble by Mr. Soto. Trustees will meet in closed session as permitted by the Texas Government Code, Section 551.001. Deliberations on appointments, employment, compensation, evaluation, assignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of employment pursuant to the Texas Code 551.074. I think that's it, isn't it?
They're going
Yep.
into executive session 7:38.
Oh. It's 8:21, and we're back in open session. Dr. Sanchez?
All right, I'd like to go to item 13, which is consideration and approval for Plainview ISD Board of Trustees to modify the district mask mandate as optional effective May 1, and consideration and approval to give the superintendent authority to make reasonable COVID-19 protocol accommodations and/or modifications in Plainview ISD mask protocol. Succinctly stated, any place that we have the ability to social distance 3 feet or greater, masks will be optional. Any place that we can't social distance 3 feet or greater, masks will not be optional, they'll be required. So if you're working with a student and it's face-to-face, masks are required. However, you're teaching in front of a class, they won't be required. If you're meeting with staff and you're 3 feet apart, masks aren't required. If you're in a confined space, less than 3 feet, they will be required. From now until May 1st, it'll give the team and I an opportunity to work through scenarios. We have a meeting Monday with principals to talk through those scenarios so that everyone's on the same page with this. It'll also provide some flexibility with other upcoming events such as graduation and prom. And so with that, I'll cover 3 data points briefly. One is we haven't had a staff COVID infection in 30 days. Our student number is 0.02 in the same period. And every staff member who wanted a vaccination by this point would have received his or her second vaccination as of yesterday. And vaccinations take about 2 weeks to take full effect, so May 1 would allow us the time from the vaccination to May 1 for that 10 days to occur, so that May 1, then we would be ready to proceed forward. So with that, I'd like to make that recommendation for those items, for item 13.
Board, any questions on this? With no questions, do I hear a motion? We have a motion by Ms. Rivera. Do I hear a second? We have a second by Mr. James. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
All right, we'll get to work on writing them, so don't take them off and throw them yet. We have to wait till May 1st. It's not graduation, so.
I already asked if I could do that, he said.
All right, next we'll go on to employment. So we have consideration of professional employment contracts for the 2021-22 school year. This will be a combined recommendation of packages 1 and 2 for professional employment contracts.
Board, do I hear a motion?
Madam President, I move that the board accept the recommendation of professional contracts packages 1 and 2 for the 2021-2022 school year as discussed in executive session.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Bass. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Mr. James. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
Okay. The next item we have is consideration of administrative employment contracts for the 2021-22 school year, package 1. So I'd like to recommend on behalf of the administration, package 1, which includes all administrators except for Mr. De La Garza.
Board, any questions? Do I hear a motion?
Madam President, I move that the board accept the recommendation of administrative contracts package 1 for the 2021-2022 school year as discussed in executive session.
We have a motion by Mr. James. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. Bass. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, I'd like to recommend package 2 under administrative employment contracts, which is Mr. De La Garza by himself. He is that special. And so I'd like to make that recommendation on behalf of the administration.
Board, do I hear a motion?
Madam President, I move the board accept the recommendation of administrative contract package 2 for the 2021-2022 school year as discussed.
We have a motion by Mr. Soto. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Mr. James. All in favor? We have 4, and I'm abstaining from this vote. So 4-1 abstention.
All right. Okay, the next item is personal. He walks in with Sonic drinks. So,
Can we revote?
We're gonna have to do that again.
to celebrate your contract, Jeff. Adios. Okay, the next item is consideration of the superintendent employment contract. It's a one-year extension with no change in any of the terms, compensation or otherwise. It's an extension of an additional year. So I'd like to very personally make that recommendation.
Board, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion on consideration of the superintendent's employment contract.
We have a motion by Mr. James. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. Bass. Do I, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
Okay. If I may ask for a point of personal privilege, I would like to recognize that there is a superintendent also in the room who is in the 21 days of nerve-wracking waiting, and Mr. Brown, who has been named the lone finalist of Claude ISD. So I'd like to recognize Mr. Brown and thank him for all his work in Plainview ISD. If we could please give him a round of applause. And on that very positive note, that concludes the business of the district.
Okay. Board, if you'll let Dr. Sanchez know about the training in San Antonio, Fort Worth.
If y'all are interested, please let me know. And I do need 2 signatures.
If you can before you leave, it's 8:29 and this meeting is adjourned.
All right, if I can get